We sometimes want to be too localized to the extent that you don't see the bigger picture. Let Malava show us the way by showing us what is good for Malava and what is the bigger picture. Do you know, I've been telling people it's usually very difficult on African soil to defeat a president who is looking for his second term.
And Dr. Barak Muluka joins us this morning here on the broadcast. Daktari, good morning.
Morning, Abdi. Morning, fellow panelists. As usual, I had to give the newer generations a head start.
Yeah.
So I'm now here.
So it's your time to catch up.
I was monitoring them, naturally.
Okay.
I've heard everything they have said about non-reform law.
Yeah.
Those who have attempted to apologize for the current regime. I did not miss the nuances of the apologies, especially by my son Javas. You know, I was in school with his dad, and therefore he's my son. His dad was my classmate, and I'm disturbed that my brother Okumu Bigambo has not taken time to make his son as progressive as he was.
Thank you, Dr. for joining us. So we begin on that note. Appears that the Foreign Affairs CS was not alive to the surprising and the crushing defeats in Botswana, for example, and in Senegal in the elections where incumbents were defeated, is it? And what's your take on the politics of term limits and the sentiments by some politicians?
We start from the soundbite so that we give it some value. As you know, I was Secretary General of the Amani National Congress, and part of our effort as a party was not just to seek to capture power where there was an outgoing president. It was also to make Musalia Mudavadi the president. But he made it difficult for us to make him president when there was an outgoing president. I therefore appreciate where he is speaking from now that he is an insider who imagines that he is comfortably ensconced in the Kenya Kwanza government, and sitting in that comfortable place, he's turned a blind eye to the goings on in the country, the things which made us think that we needed him as president, because we believed that Musalia Mudavadi was a pair of safe hands. But you can see where he is. Terms are given by the citizens in democracies, unless it is a monarchist regime, which we are not. We are a liberal democracy, a Republican government, and it is for the citizens to determine that they would like to extend the tenure of the person who, for the time being, holds the reins of power. And clearly from the agitation that we are seeing, we believe there's sufficient political consciousness, robustness, there is cause, there is will, and there is ability to remove the present government.
Constitutionally.
Constitutionally.
Javas, given these sentiments, is it some way and somewhat wrapped in a more diplomatic language to the other sentiments made by William Kamket and Oscar Sudi, who are very confident of rigging the polls in 2027? And ideally, how does this juxtapose with our constitutional democracy?
Well, you see, Ayub, with respect to the soundbite that's just been played and the remarks that have been attributed to certain legislators that it will be difficult to defeat the sitting president, Honorable William Ruto, and that, as Honorable Musalia Mudavadi indicates, that it will be very difficult to oust President Ruto. Well, I think it's important for us to place it on the table for purposes of dissection and proper reflection. As long as the codes of memory lengthen, We may recall that in our democratic history, of course, no president has served only for a single term. But that does not hold here. It's always been the will, and it will be the will of the people to determine who holds office as president for a term or more than a term, or even in other position. But you see, let's face it, democracy is a project that's perpetually under construction. Mm-hmm. In fact, it's the only project that never comes to completion. It's always an experiment. And we can say, while Kenya is Africa's foremost democracy, we'll continue to have such kind of challenges so that we ameliorate it. And even with the hubris and the sentiment, the fears and the concerns, we bring ourselves to the critical issues of focus. One, how easy is it to rig elections in Kenya? It's not particularly easy. All of us here seated on this table appreciate the import of the Maina Kiai decision and the place of the polling station as the final place for determination of the results. Secondly, it is not owed to the sound bites that the election of 2027 will be determined. Yeah. We know the place of the social contract, for example. And as long as a social contract subsists within the cycle of 5-year period, it is incumbent upon the party and the government in place to fulfill the substance and the contents of that social contract, and that when that circle turns, or when the circle goes a full turn or makes a full turn, yeah, the people will always determine at the ballot, consciously, whether they want to renew the mandate of, for example, President William Ruto presently, or reconsider. Now, as I said here just a few days ago, you cannot look at a toddler and determine whether that toddler will make a good father or good grandfather. Now, of course, we know that the ledger of the work of this administration is perpetually and constantly under assessment on matters infrastructure, matters of the economy, matters of the human rights records, the values of good governance. And Ayub, the 2027 election will be determined on whether that social contract has been fulfilled or not. But look at the arguments. Of course, my mother's cousin, Dr. Barak Muluka here, who speaks eloquently about the issues of the current administration and how, for example, of course, he's diametrically opposed to the current administration. But as all of us as great citizens, and Dr. Muluka is an esteemed mind, I know he loves this country so much. And I know when he's concerned, and he's a Secretary General of a great party, the DNA, that when he's concerned about affairs of governance, it is a concern that all of us share. Okay. And Ayub, as I close on this sentiment, I would say that if President William Ruto, or when President William Ruto actually fulfills the substance of the social contract, yeah, the commitments that he made by 2027 on matters in infrastructure, I mean, really, then it will be very difficult to oust him. Now, with a bit of lenses to the not too distant past, at the risk of somebody concluding that I'm passing great accolades to the current administration, look, for example, at Galana Kulalu. It is emerging as a succeeding project compared to how it was under the past regime. And remember, for example, in 2019, an audit report indicated that Galana Kulalu was a sinkhole for about 7.2 billion shillings. And you remember even the Green Arava, appearing before the Agriculture Committee, indicated the kind of frustrations that it was facing under that regime. And today, if a critical audit was to be conducted, that was a sinkhole. So, respecting the sentiments of Honorable Mudavadi, I would say this. If the social contract is fulfilled, if projects, infrastructure, if the economy succeeds or moves up better from how we found it in 2022, then that will be an argument that President William Ruto will make as he campaigns for re-election.
And that is subject to the determination that will be made by the people, who the Constitution deposits all sovereign power under Article 1, which the Prime Cabinet Secretary is not alive to.
But you see, yes, that's Article 1, Sub-Article 1, Article 1, Sub-Article 1 of the Constitution. Still, when you read Article 1, Sub-Article 3 of the Constitution, Ayub, provides that the sovereign power is delegated to 3 institutions. 1, the National Assembly and the county assemblies as devolved, the executive at the national level and the county level, and the judiciary. That sovereign power is delegated. And in fact, as we look at all these, at times it's always tempting for people to train all their guns, for example, on just the president as the head of the executive. Yet we have got critical institutions that also we must hold to account.
Point made. And the head of state is a state property in that regard, and he said it's an open book, therefore subject to reading and scrutiny by the public. We are a democracy, nonetheless. I will talk about Galana Kulalu project, but Kidi,
yes.
Coming to you, the Prime Cabinet Secretary, in your view, has he deliberately omitted the place of the people who will make that choice at the ballot? Certainly not him. He's just one voter in any case. And how important is this deliberate absence of the people's power in the statements made by politicians, including the Prime Cabinet Secretary, and in the case of Botswana and Senegal, who ushered in new administrations in place where incumbents were contesting? In the case of the young man in Senegal, just 44 years old, Bassirou Diomaye Faye, who defeated President Macky Sall.
I think that I need to tell my partner to the immediate right that they say that the chick that will grow into a cock is spotted on day one. And so I think that disabushes. Yes, but diving right into the heart of your question, I must again remind the good Prime Cabinet Secretary that in 1967, Somalia had a peaceful transfer of power when Aden Abdullah Osman was defeated by his former prime minister called Abdirashid Ali Sharmake. And going into the other examples you have indicated, I think brings me into a place of saying that a parrot will always echo the master. And I think that while I respect what the Prime Cabinet Secretary is saying, he is saying what this regime would want to hear. And so that means that we might not be in a position to take his words very seriously. I interface with young people daily under the Interparties Youth Forum, and I appreciate very profoundly the frustration of young people towards this administration. Part of that frustration stems from the fact that what has let this country down is what I would call legacy politics and legacy politicians. Because looking at William Ruto, the candidate, vis-a-vis William Ruto, the president, you see two fundamentally different people. And the difference is here, that while the campaigns were conducted with so much poetry, you come to governance and you see the fundamental lack of radical imagination. Because Kenya Kwanza is engaged in what I would call, and very respectfully, politics of small things. I say politics of small things because there is this obsession, and my brother has reiterated it here very eloquently, that if we build infrastructure, I wonder who told him that when we have these swanky projects, that now we are having a good economy. We can have those swanky projects which would reflect very good on our macroeconomics, but when we leave the people behind, when we do not apply our minds into how to engage mass prosperity, then I do not think we are going anywhere. Part of why many young people think that this administration should have gone like yesterday is because how it has failed to assure the people left out and left behind that they also matter. And so, my brother, I think I will be the bearer of bad news. I think this administration is going home.
Yeah, I'll come to Javas for the right of reply. But Honorable Mark Nyamita, what's your take of what the Prime Cabinet Secretary said and what your colleagues at the National Assembly have been saying regarding that?
I think it is always good to contextualize a speech by anyone, including what the Prime Cabinet Secretary was talking about. And they said it has not been difficult. It has been difficult in Africa to remove an incumbent president. However, we have seen that an incumbent president, for example, in the case that you've said, like in Senegal, it has actually happened. But I think the bigger debate is, it's not about removing Barak and placing in Mark. Yes. What is the reason for you to remove that sitting president. And when you come to the issue of the social contract that my brother here was talking about, whose architect is seated to my right, Barack Muluka. the measure that we must use to, the yardstick that we must use to measure this government is actually that social contract. And it was in the manifesto, drafted by my good brother here. Has the Kenya Kwanzaa...
Dr. Barack?
The social contract was drafted by John Locke, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Montesquieu, Thomas Hobbes, Voltaire, Diderot, and the others. And it finds expression, best expression, in the American Declaration of Independence, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all the people are made, are created equal, and they are endowed by their creator with unalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
So you had no role whatsoever in the better manifesto?
No, I had no role in the crafting of the social contract.
Yeah.
But allow me a minute.
Yes, you'll respond to let him finish and I'll come to you. Yeah.
We'll need a metronome here.
Yeah.
That's fine.
So let him finish. I'll come to you.
So my brother Barack Muluka was in the team that actually brought this administration to power.
That is true.
And one of the things that we can only use is a manifesto, because that's the only document that they actually used to convince the people to vote it in.
Yeah.
With the poetry that my brother speaks to. And if you ask me, 2.5 years to 3 years down the line, there has been a great attempt at meeting some of those things. And when my brother speaks to the point of...
what percent do you think, speaking for the broad-based...
well, let's not talk about percentage, but we can go into different verticals and see whether there has actually been an attempt to bring inclusivity.
Yeah, not inclusivity. I'm talking about the manifesto, which you said should be the basis to judge.
Yeah, and I'm coming to it, and I'll talk to you about a couple of things. So what my brother Kiddy says that you can do the swanky projects, but you must be able to carry the young people, or you must be able to carry the masses along. I don't think there's been anything that has carried the masses along. Like, for example, the transformation we are seeing in the healthcare. From 7 million, who was me and Kiddy who were able to pay for NHIF, to about 24 million plus Kenyans now being able to access healthcare. That is transformational. In 2 years, from 7 million to about 24 million people being able to access healthcare today. I saw there are still a bit of teething problems, especially now that they are migrating into OTP, but those are really small issues. Is it impactful? I would say that it is to a great extent. And I tell you because I interact with the people on a daily basis. That is a big attempt. I think over the last 2 years, we haven't had this issue of, Kenyans, which we talk about the masses, before we have had many Kenyans crying for food aid in the previous governments. Over the last 2 years, that has not been the case. I think we have produced enough food not to be able to import food over a period of time. And I think this is because there's some transformation in agriculture.
And rice farmers in Kirinyaga County are up in arms against the importation window too.
That's fine. I'm saying we are talking about previously, and I want us, because we live in this country, 3-4 years ago, every single year, there was always drought or people crying that there is not enough food. And we have always had to give relief food to people. The rice that is in Mwea, the rice that is in Migori, I also support that before the government moves to import rice, they must offtake all the rice that is in Migori, because they are farmers from where I come from. They must offtake all the rice that is from whatever. If there is a deficit, then they do it. If you talk about agriculture, I come from a sugar belt in Sony Sugar. Farmers were crying. Today, I can tell you, farmers are getting paid in a week's time. If that is not transformation in that particular sector, that is carrying the masses, because the masses are actually the farmers. Parents are now able to actually take their kids to school because they are able to predict when they're actually getting the income. In fact, people had actually moved away from sugarcane farming. They're actually slowly getting back to it. The reforms are not yet fully to where they actually, and we're talking about a period of time. Yeah. So when the Prime CS says that, and I think in the context of how I understand it, is that, and even me, I have said in many public forums that it is not impossible to remove a sitting or an incumbent leader in any position, at the presidency, at governor level, or at a member, in any particular position, especially if they are not working. But if they are working, then it becomes almost an impossibility.
So in your view, working or not working?
I think the president is working.
And so you talked about the manifesto.
In this country, for the first time, Ayub, there is a project in every part of the country.
Yeah, okay. You are talking about economic inclusivity before we go to Dr. Barak. But isn't it troubling when only 14 of the 281 promises made in the manifesto have only been implemented? We are just 2 years. So given mathematically, give or take, it should be 28. You cannot do promises mathematically the way you're saying. Okay. Because you cannot say that if I listed about 100, there are things that happen at once and they impact all across. You can't say that I'm going to do something on a Monday, Tuesday. You can't look at a manifesto and try to do it mathematically that, you know, if I've done this in 2 days, I'm going to be able to do it. The major ones. Think about, I mean, when Kenya Kwanza, they promised the Hustler Fund. They brought it. We know the Hustler Fund has its challenges. We should be talking about the challenges that the Hustler Fund is having. And let me tell you something. I have seen people argue on many fronts. For example, even the e-citizen, it's all over here. That, you know, there's a scandal around e-citizen. What people don't know is before e-citizen was actually fully implemented, the monies that now we are seeing being collected, we can question where they are. And I think it is incumbent, and I like that Parliament is already seized of this matter and trying to get to the bottom of it. But it is not to say that scrap it. It is to fix the issues. Because otherwise then if you scrap it, this money is still going to be lost in a manner that the auditor is not able to even pick it up. Yeah, and the auditor yesterday was there.
Absolutely.
The deputy Isaac.
When we are talking about the challenges of Hustler Fund, it is to address the challenges there. And let me tell you, and there's been a bit of, I saw some people arguing that, what is it that 500 shillings or 1,000 shillings or 2,000 shillings will impact on a few people? I want to tell you, I deal with people every day. There are parents who have had their children stay at home for 2 weeks when they require 200 shillings to get back to school. 200 shillings.
So how do you sustain that?
No, I'm just trying to tell you the impact of 200 shillings has made some parents keep their children at home for 2 weeks.
Thank you.
In Migori, where I come from with my good brother here.
Okay.
So the 200 shillings to me might be pocket change. But it is every other thing. In fact, finally, before you get to Barak, Ayub, I want to tell you. One time there was some money when there was an empowerment session that happened and women were being given money. And one was given about 6,000 and they lost it. He was caught going to commit suicide. Because for them, the loss of 6,000 shillings is every single thing. And what happened in this Hustler Fund, I tell you, I have worked in telecoms. I know about the Kadogo economy. I know how it actually works. The first people who actually got the loan for 500 shillings decided to disappear and not to pay it back. Why? Because it's 500 shillings, you know. They were used to 100. If you get statistics from Safaricom, even the people who borrow Fuliza, majority of them are between 100 and 300 shillings.
Okay. Dr. Barak, yes.
Sorry.
So you had a point here.
The question.
Earlier on, I had cut you short in regards to your taking part in the coming up with
I've listened very keenly. The Honorable Mark Nyamita contextualizes the discussion in the framework of the social contract, which, of course, he then runs away from to begin reeling off unrealistic statistics. The social contract that he talks about lists 3 things: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And he talks about every person. Mark Nyamita talks about the masses. The liberal democracy that he's talking about talks about the individual, that any single individual life matters.
Correct.
And that the starting point is life, that to secure these inalienable rights, government is constituted, deriving its just powers from the consent
of the governed.
Of the governed.
Yes.
And that whenever any government fails to secure these rights, then it must be removed and be replaced by another government.
Yes.
That is liberal democracy. And yes, he's right where he says that I was there when we crafted the manifesto that constitutes the Kenya Kwanza government's social contract with Kenyans. But it is true that I'm not there as the Kenya Kwanza government abuses the people's rights and takes away lives, and that Mark Nyamita is there. That they are the cause that President William Ruto has run away from the social contract that the generation Zoom, the Gen Zs, were trying to take him back to tell him that you signed a social contract with us and you have run away from that social contract. Now look, if you have destroyed limb and life, you fail the rest of the tests in liberal democracy. Because the people must be there first to enjoy liberty and to pursue happiness. So if you have a government that is abducting, and I'm aware that my nephew here, my son, justifies the abductions. He uses euphemisms. He talks about people disappearing. We need not remind him about what has happened in other totalitarian regimes, under Nazi Germany, under apartheid South Africa, that you would be vaporized and you just disappear. And as somebody said on this show earlier on, some people buried clothes, some buried pieces of human beings. Government that fails the test of protection of human life loses the raison d'être. And it doesn't matter whether it is the government itself that is perpetrating those ills or it is somebody else. If it happens under the watch of that government, then that government has failed.
Yes.
The government has got the responsibility to protect limb and life, both from itself or by itself and by other perpetrators. That is why police services and police forces are constituted in society, not to shoot people in the legs, but to protect them. That they are civilian entities that are supposed to work with the people, to find out what endangers people's rights and freedom of movement, of living, of enjoying happiness, and therefore intervenes. It is a service. It's not a murder squad. But when that service becomes a force that chaperones goons who are destroying property as estates, who are destroying property as life, then the regime that is in power for the time being deserves to be removed democratically. And that is where this country is. We cannot tiptoe around issues and apologize for this regime. Never mind that we may have been made insiders, that we are now included, and that the misrule is now broad-based.
Okay. and you have talked about Nazism. I hope there is no one Joseph Goebbels who was Hitler's propaganda minister. Yes, you had a point.
You know, Ayuba, as Abraham Lincoln, the 16th president of the US, propounded during his Gettysburg Address, he spoke to the longevity or the eternity of a government for the people, with the people, and by the people. This government, of course, as we see it, as it is with every other government under a democracy, is always elected by the people and conducts its affairs for the interest of the people. If we're to ask ourselves the question...
But Mudavadi doesn't
which do not
have that byline.
Killing them.
I mean,
extrajudicially.
Okay. Before even the live, the Prime Cabinet Secretary Javas, government by the people, ideally he ought to have talked about saying the Kenyan people and their importance in the polls in 2027. He talks about incumbency, and there's a lot of emphasis and attention on the man, the president, and his re-election, and not by who in this case.
Correct. And Ayub, it has not been my fortune to listen to the entire speech of Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi, and so that I appreciate his current...
Contextualize it.
Yeah, contextualize it based on the soundbite that has been aired here. And also, we must resist the temptation as a people to fall into the trap of perpetual dystopia, which seems to be the religion, if at all, of most of the opposition luminaries. Now, factually speaking, of course, we may not be in heaven, but we must not wish for hell. Yet, there are leaders, for example, Opposition United, so-called, who are in purgatory and now promising that they have got the power and ability to take a nation to heaven when themselves, in fact, have no religion and belong to none in matters salvaging the destiny of a nation. Now, look, let me give an example here. In South Africa, not so long ago, we had an entire nation rise and buffeted by the storms of protests by the students under the fees must fall protests and riots. Here in Kenya, not so long ago, we have seen the commitment and effort of our government to reduce by, I think, 40% the cost of public university education.
Which, according to a student, is not working for them.
Now, you see, it's just been proclaimed a few
hours ago.
Yes. It's just about to start rolling out. In fact, there's a directive now to public universities to institute that directive. It is to start rolling out. Yet, there are those who are haranguing from the agoras that it is not going to work. Yet, even the implementation is just about to start. And that's what I'm saying, that we must not find ourselves oversubscribing to the gospel of the dystopian, false angels who want to imagine that actually nothing is actually happening. Let's face it. There are things that all of us are concerned that should even work better. Okay. The roads that are being constructed, for instance, are they being completed? Are roads being constructed, for example? The issue of the 40% reduction of public education, public university fees, is it a sigh of relief for many families across Kenya, many who cannot afford? Those are things that we should be looking at. And look, we may find ourselves trapped in the web of high-sounding discourses in the capitals and peri-urban areas. Yet, as Honorable Nyamita indicated a little earlier, there are people within villages and hamlets, Ayub, to whom the issue of the relief in itself, for example, for education, or when a project is coming to their doorstep, whether it's electricity, etc., it is a revolutionary idea for them. So, for people who from maybe this show who will hop into their SUVs and drive off into the corner offices, should not imagine that the way the economy is working for them is the same way economy is working for citizens in, for example, Mandera, or is it Hargadera where you come from? Wajir. Or even in the villages and hamlets where my relative here, Kidi, comes from. Yeah. And Kidi, I kid you not. As a matter of fact, if the economy gets to work and projects get to be implemented, a number of times you may find that my relative, Dr. Muluka here, may be chagrined by the outcome of the election finding himself as a victim of the Bradley effect. Because there is the social aspect of people positioning themselves that they are maybe diametrically opposed to some idea, yet some places we are having tarmac roads that were never there before.
Okay.
Now this is transformation, this is change.
Yes, Kidi, and then Dr. I'll come to you before Honorable Mark. Yes, please.
My brother Java speaks in marvelous Queen's language.
Yeah.
Did you study in London?
It's actually not Queen's language.
Yeah.
As a teacher of linguistics, I can tell you, but let me stop there.
Yes. A man wearing a silk necktie is attempting to speak for those who are left out and left behind. And when he speaks of SUVs, I think he is one of the people who drives one of the biggest SUVs in this town. But this is the gist of what I want to bring my brother up to speed with. That when we speak about the fact that so many young people are concerned that the government is not doing its best and putting its best foot forward, we must remember that when this administration was coming into office, there was a concern that the previous administration, for all the good work it was claiming it had done, it had simply increased the bottom lines for the owners of factors of production. We had hoped that this government would fundamentally departure from that thinking. Today, as we speak, I think that if you look at the Kenya's political landscape, you will agree that we are still caught in the problem of the Contractors' Manifesto. And the Contractors' Manifesto is where we have got two manifestos, one for the people, speaking of high-sounding ideals, as my brother puts it, but when it comes to running government, then the financiers of a regime usually have a upper hand. Today, as we speak, there is an overdrive to privatize a lot of public entities. And so you ask yourself, is the privatization driven by desire for greater efficiency, or is it calculated at putting wealth, power, and money in the hands of the privileged few who then are able to bankroll the regime? My brother Javas, we appreciate the roads because the roads are good for an economy to grow. Part of what you must look at is its infrastructure. The second thing is consumption, and my brother Nyamita says that we have produced so much. The bulk of that production has come from good weather. So that I think that had we been faced by a persistent drought, like we witnessed between 2020 and 2022, possibly we would be having a less than elegant scenario. If you look at the number of Kenyans facing acute hunger today, then the numbers are not any better because over 2 million people are facing acute hunger. Maybe we will hear from those who are holding brief for the regime that what are they doing intelligently to make sure that these people facing extreme hunger find immediate help. As I conclude, I must still tell you that we think that this administration is not doing its best because look at the public spending infrastructure. We are still borrowing expensively from Peter to pay Paul. The doctrine of no representation without, no taxation without representation is most profound in Kenya today, particularly in regards to young people and future generations, because we are borrowing massively, not to invest in capital expenditure, but to meet recurrent expenditure. Some of these things requires urgent intervention. We wish we were able to hear that from our brothers, from my brother wearing the silk necktie. Thank you.
And Honorable Mark Nyamita, given all this, whilst it depends on then the reservoirs of all sovereign power, who are the people, why is it that there is sudden appetite in overlooking their very crucial and important role in our constitutional democracy by either your colleagues at the National Assembly or others, including the Prime Cabinet Secretary?
On this show, I have said before, Ayub, that when a politician speaks, sometimes they speak to the audience. and many times you might not be the audience. So I don't want to speak to what my colleagues, Honorable Kamket and Honorable Sudi, have spoken to. In fact, I've been on this show before, on this studio, I think, and I've said when Fatuma Jeho said that if kura ikikuwa kidogo tutaongeza, I think they are very reckless statements, extremely reckless. And I want to also say again, it is reckless of my colleagues to say that they will find other means. I don't think, from where I sit, I don't think the current president or the current regime, if it is to live to its expectation, if it is to continue on the trajectory of economic transformation for this country as it has begun, if this were to hold until the next election, I don't think there will be a need to even find other means of adding for it votes. I don't think so. The bigger issue in this nation is a youth problem. And I must say that it's a challenge that collectively all of us must find something to do about it. But the challenge of the youth did not begin with this regime. Kenya is a beneficiary of the demographic dividend, which many other nations don't have. This government has attempted to try and move a bit of that dividend that we have to get external jobs where possible. There will be a debate on, other people said, oh, they're going for other smaller jobs and things like that. I tell you, from my constituency, I have had a group that went to the UK and they have gone to work in agriculture. Each of them is earning averagely about 300 to 400,000. They are paying school fees for their siblings while at home. This government, under the affordable housing, has attempted, there are architects now that are getting jobs. The number of people going on paid internships in government has actually gone higher than it was actually before. And the numbers were inconsistent in the case of the affordable housing program as presented by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. What I'm saying is, but we have a higher number. Let me not get into the exact numbers because KBS and what the government is saying, maybe that can be rationalized. But let's say even that there are 200,000 people. It is actually more than probably what the other previous regimes have actually done. Now, when we have... The previous regime should not be your measure instrument, is it, Honorable Nyamita? When you are accorded the mandate, you deliver on the promise. And how did we then fail to plan in all this? But it's not the benchmark. But let me tell you, there must be a starting point. There must be a starting point. What do you mean the previous regime cannot be a benchmark? When this government came into place, they said they want to do better than the previous regime. Even the regimes, I see the collective opposition, if any, are saying that, we want to come in, but they will not tell you what they're going to do better. Better than what? Better than what is currently obtaining. So you cannot say that we cannot use the previous regime. If, in any case, that's why they want to blind us. The previous regime concentrated the resources of this nation in particular regions of this country. This particular regime has opened that pass. And I dare say that currently, as we speak, there is a development project in each and every other part of this country. And how then are you defending? I mean, these are very profound remarks because Dr. William Ruto, as Deputy President, was also a beneficiary from the political economy of that administration. But he was not, the overall responsibility still sat with the President, Uhuru Kenyatta. And he would argue that, he didn't have powers to do one or two other things. Now he has it. How then? Because if you look at the institution of... And power, we actually can see it, Ayub. Just let's do some listing here, quick. National Assembly, Leader of the Majority Party, Honorable Duale, his ally, close ally. Kimani Ichung'wah, Budget Committee Chair for 8 years, his ally. Looking at also the Senate Majority Leadership at the time, Kipchumba Murkomen, Professor Abraham Kithure Kindiki at some point, the Murang'a County Governor was also part of the Senate leadership, Susan Kihika Kimani, who are all plucked out in the aftermath of the fallout between Kenyatta and Ruto. So he was a beneficiary. If you are then to apportion the blame, how much will he take? When you say that they were plucked out, it means then they did not have an opportunity to actually contribute during that particular time. But for now, I do not want to speak for the other people who are in the team.
Yes.
I can only say that the full responsibility in the previous regime was actually with Uhuru Kenyatta. And we know in this nation that the powers of a deputy president in reality are different from what is actually, it's actually a principal assistant to the president.
Should it be fair?
But for now,
Yes.
Kenyans have now had the opportunity. Yes. Let me just land, Ayub.
Yes, please, yeah.
Kenyans now have had the opportunity to differentiate President William Ruto assisting Uhuru Kenyatta and him himself at the helm.
Yeah.
And to get to the substance of the matter, is it better than the previous regime? And if you ask me, I will tell you the answer is yes.
Okay.
And one of the starting points when my brother talks about, privatization of state-owned enterprises, I'll give you an example. The government's role in modern democracies, the government's role is not to indulge in actual business, but to create a conducive environment for private sector to actually thrive.
Thank you.
If you look at, and I'll give a practical example that is closer to me, Sony Sugar, which is where my brother, we come with you.
Yes.
I am telling you, by leasing of that factory, the farmers are actually benefiting. For the government to actually, the government had been pumping money every year, every other cycle.
Okay.
And that money was never put to good use. It is actually working.
Okay.
But I think finally, let me
briefly, I need to go to Dr. Barakia.
That the expectations of Kenyans on President William Ruto is extremely high. And I think he alluded to it recently. And he said, based on his experience, based on his education, and the time that he has been around, the expectation is at an all-time high. And this is the challenge that the nation is actually, we expect excellence at an all-time high. So the pedestal is way higher than what we have put for previous presidents.
Okay.
And I am only glad that the president actually took it in his stride and said, I do not have an excuse. And we are telling the president, you truly do not have an excuse, but to deliver for Kenyans.
Which is beautiful in democracy, is it? When your citizens are emboldened. Yes, Dr. Barak Muluka. In this whole context, first, do you agree with the president that he is a hybrid representation of Jomo, Moi, Kibaki and Uhuru?
In certain contexts, yes, I agree. In others, I do not agree. When President Moi came to power in 1978, and I speak from a practical lived witness account, not hearsay or things I have read somewhere, because I was there. I was 20 years old when President Moi came to power. He said that he was going to walk in Jomo Kenyatta's footsteps. What are some of these footsteps? Some of these footsteps are, for example, that President Jomo Kenyatta was the individual who would stand before the nation and say, nitawaponda ponda kama panya. I'm going to crush you like rats. And to that extent, we have seen President William Ruto saying, shoot them in the legs. So to that extent, you see the parallelism between him and Jomo Kenyatta. But it's also true that within the first 3 years of Jomo Kenyatta's rule, we did not see young men being shot in the streets. We did not see the Kenya police escorting goons to cause mayhem and to destroy limb and life. In the first 2 years of President Moi, we did not see him killing Kenyans in the streets. We must wonder what it's going to be like after 10 years if President William Ruto is telling us that what we are seeing now are only the clouds. The thunderstorm is yet to come. Within the first 3 years of President Mwai Kibaki, we did not see this kind of miasma. Now, the gentlemen here are talking about macroeconomics. They can lie to me about microeconomics, statistics, though I learned many years ago from Orwellian literature that it's possible to talk about statistics and reel off more and more statistics when they actually do not have practical reference to things in the real world. But within the macroeconomic context, I don't know where these roads they are talking about are. I've just come from Westlands in Nairobi, which is the metropolis. Really, this is the hub of this whole thing. And the roads are terrible in the city itself, that you even try to navigate between Westlands Shopping Center, Westlands town, if we could call it that, and the city center, and the road is horrific. That you try to drive here on this Riverside Drive, which is just a few minutes from here. We could even go there with the cameras after this. You see that it is horrific. You go to this place in the neighborhood, which used to be called Lavington Green, and it is horrendous. So I don't even know what these roads and other macro indicators we are talking about are. I don't see them. They will have to be named. I do not know about the project that is going on in my own home county of Kakamega. We would have to be told, and I don't know which projects are going on in Nairobi where I live. Abdi, you have to give me time.
Yes,
You've been giving the rest of the panelists time, and I've listened quietly. I want to bring home this message, that in fact, macro indicators are not the measurement of the performance of a government. The performance of government is sustainable human development. You must talk about the people. That in world history and in world economics, some of the most successful economies have been slave economies. That we talk about the revolution in San Domingo in 1779 and Tucson, Bolivia. And we see that it was one of the best economies in the world, but it was a slave economy. That in this country, when we talk about regimes, we should also add on a sixth regime. And the sixth regime is the colonial regime. And under the colonial regime, this economy thrived. But were we happy about it?
Asante Daktari, much appreciated. We are past time. Jabas, we have to end it there, not even taking the feedback, because we are 3 minutes past the hour. And I appreciate, gentlemen, for your timely input. Kidi, thank you. Jabas, thank you. Always another time to talk about. Mark Nyamita, thank you. Dr. Barak, thank you so much for your time.
More time next time.
More time next time. And I'll,
You know, my mother's cousin, Dr. Muluka, speaks quite eloquently. We thank him for that, but he must appreciate that if President William Ruto's sin is ambition and construction of projects, roads, etc., then let that sin live after him.
Thank you. And up next is Health and Lifestyle. We'll see you tonight on JK.
You know, Ruto gave us the template that we are using to assess him. He's like a student who has set the exam, prepared.